Good afternoon as well to everyone's here and to my fellow panels. It's such an honor to be here. So if we want to address about common principles, I think it's only fair if we identify what are our common challenges in Global South. According to IEA, they estimate that the global investment energy will reach US dollars 3.3 trillion this year and approximately 2.2 trillion invested in clean energy. So it's a big amount of money. That's why if we see these data, it's not about talking about availability of the private capital. We're talking right now, the challenges are on access and architecture on when we are going to implement it in our projects. So I think we can establish that in the Global South, those are the two main problems that we're facing. Hence, we know that in energy infrastructure, investment is such a long-term project. It can go to 20 to 30 years spanning, and then there's a lot of like transmission networks, also like battery manufacturing, and a lot of examples that we can take from Indonesia as a country that has a lot of renewable energy resources. So I think the first principle is, I believe, policy certainty and political stability. I think at the end of the day, we have to create an environment where we give confidence to these investors for the private capital to flow in, so we can get and unlock the access first. We want that those $1 trillion will mean nothing if we cannot make it accessible, if we cannot make it flow to the Global South. So I think that's the first core principles where we can make this market more predictable, and so these investors have more confidence in us as a Global South. And I think also particularly seeing not just a segregated one country or the other, I think we can focus more on collaboration instead of competition to access that investment pools. I think since we have a lot of things in common as well, we can talk more about collaborations, maybe in terms of like frameworks for like, let's say, carbon capture regulations, or I think there's a lot of EVs. EVs is also very advancing in Indonesia. You know that I think we already crossed that tipping point for the past 2 years, and the adoption rate is very high. I think we can learn from each other, as also Ms. Sarah, you mentioned the EVs also in India is very growing as well. And Indonesia also big battery manufacturing, because we have the nickel and the critical minerals. We have very rich in natural resources. So I think that's the second point on how we can have these common principles. I think the next one could be also the role of the government itself to make more de-risking projects and more bankable projects, not just only as regulators, but also as an investment enablers, helping to accelerate permitting. I think this is quite a new industry as well for Indonesia, the green space. This will be very helpful for the private capital to flow in and for the businesses to thrive. I think I would like to mention Danantara, the Sovereign Wealth Fund Indonesia, that was just quite new, we can say, but already reached around 900 billion US dollars in AUM. So I think it's a really huge assets in a quite short amount of time. But I think what we think that we can be very proud of is there's a practical example of the waste to energy program that we have in Indonesia. If you're not familiar with it, basically, rather than asking municipalities to finance project individually, Danantara actually aggregate and coordinates all the stakeholders to reduce the financing risk, so the private capital can have more confidence to ensure this can flow to Indonesia, and making sure the implementation goes well. Because most of the time the problems are also in the implementation and the monitoring evaluation. I think that's also the common struggles that the Global South facing, especially with the political change in Indonesia. It's every 5 years. I think having this confidence when there's Danantara would pass through to the next administration gives more confidence, especially it's 20 to 30 years of investment, not just a 5 years horizon. So yeah, I think at the end, I think we need to recognize more on our global common challenges, but also our common strategies. Seeing this more as compatibility or to like more to partnerships instead of competitive, and seeing this that sustainability and this green economic as an economic opportunity and growth, because us as a global south, we want to see this not just only about reducing emissions but also creating jobs, achieving let's say in Indonesia we have this 8% economic growth target, and I think us as global south, we hand in together, we can actually scale this and attract more private capital flowing to the global south.